Hey everyone, Kim here, Abundant Life Tarot. Thank you so much for joining me for another Maritime Mysteries reading. We are exploring the energies surrounding the disappearance of Lynette Hooker. Remember, Brian Hooker, her husband, is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I'm going to say that right off the bat. Okay, everything that I am picking up on, it's part of what I'm seeing in the cards and, connecting the dots along the way with my intuition. And this goes for those who are leaving comments, right? You understand that this is in your opinion only, like this is in my opinion only. So I want to just preface the reading with that. I know some people don't like that we have to do that, but we have to do that, right? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We are now moving on to part 3. I've done a detailed opening oracle reading. Check it out. I then did a part 2, which covered questions 1 through 7 for our tarot and oracle reading. And now we are at the final part. And I had to think long and hard about the questions I wanted to ask. And I wanted some time to go by, especially once we knew that the Coast Guard was going to be back out in the Bahamas. I wanted to see if anything came of their search. I had a feeling nothing much would, that we're at least that we know of, like, oh, they're finding her remains or something like that. I'm sure they've, maybe found some things, but yeah. So that's where we're at. I'm recording this reading on Monday, June 8th, 2026 at, 7:26 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. I am in the Caribbean myself, as some of you know. And that's why I think her case really touches me. Like there's a chord in her story, in Lynette's story, that really just touches me for a variety of reasons. And I can't let it go. So question number 8. What happened to Lynette, and what was her state of being when she hit the water? And then, of course, was foul play involved? So it's a 3-part question. We have 10 of Earth in reverse. So this 10 of Wealth would be, or 10 of Earth is 10 of Pentacles. The key word on here is wealth. It is in reverse. We'll talk about that in a moment. What happened to her, what it was her state of being, also is embodied in that card as well. 4 of Earth. Okay, we'll talk about that. Her physical body is what we're talking about here. And now we want to know, was foul play involved? Some element of foul play involved. We have here 8 of water. Okay. Okay. And I want to use this stick real fast. There's foul play involved. My old trusty, so old and so beat up is that. Yeah. 3 of Cups. I'll talk about that in a moment. All right. So to just really get an understanding of what happened to her in the general sense of, she reached her ending, right? That's basically what we all know. We know that because where else is she? The 10s are always about endings. And the 10 of Earth in reverse is about an ending that she wasn't, this wasn't her doing. Sometimes when I say her doing, it could be her physical body giving way to disease or an accident. She caused an accident to herself, or she took her own life. When it's in reverse like this, to me, it is signaling that yes, she reached an ending, transitioned to a new beginning, but it wasn't at her behest. It wasn't at her doing with this 10 of earth in reverse. Someone also wanted to reverse something that was impacting their wealth and well-being and their sense of abundance by taking her out. I say this because of the revolving door. I don't know why when I think of this, I kind of think about like the idea of transition of life, right? You push through a revolving door and you can keep cycling through until you decide to check out. It's kind of like roundabouts. You could keep circling in, in a vehicle in a roundabout until you finally exit out. And that's what I kind of sense here. Like someone was like in this sense of like, we've been round and around and around and around, and now it's time to exit. Does that make sense? Then this card. Whenever I get a card like the Four of Earth, it does usually mean someone transitioned. Their physical body is no longer with us. They are one with the earth at the bottom of, like somewhere in this mangled type of root system. Further supported by the Eight of Water with, again, root system. It says despair. I've talked about this before where it felt like she could be tangled up maybe in some tight seaweed or like, how like the mangrove root systems run real deep and real far down, I would imagine. And like she could be tangled up and kind of meshed into that. And it's difficult to get to her. It's difficult to see where she's at. She's becoming one with the sea, the sea floor, if you will. Oh, and look at this. This card says the deleter. I saw this card earlier because this card was at the bottom of the deck. So I shuffled this particular deck. Let me show you. I shuffled it over and over and over again in preparation for this reading, this deck. And I said, okay, I'm determined not to see this card. And then look, it came up, the deleter. So someone chucked her out. Something also about the cell phone data itself, or trying to make it seem like they could have her go. Like maybe it's not just the coordinates of Brian that they're tracking, the law enforcement, right? It's hers. And important clues for when her cell phone data, her data on her watch, for example, last showed up, and it could give clues to, the coordinates to where there could be clues on where she's at. But nevertheless, we have the deleter. Isn't that interesting? This body of water, land off in the distance, and someone chucking a phone out into water, the deleter. So I wouldn't say, me personally, I would say that someone is manually throwing someone or something over. We wanted to know, was foul play involved in her disappearance? And this card was kind of sideways, almost reverse. 8 of water, 8 of cups, and kind of almost reverse. And it indicates to me that the sadness here is that, yeah, to me, that there's anxiety filled around someone who emotionally withdrew from her to the point that, yes, they could just walk away. They could just move on with their life. They could walk away from the area. They could walk away from the pain. They could walk away. This tells me that, yeah, and I wanted confirmation. I wanted a yes, no, or maybe card. I got this card here, the 3 of Cups. There's a glare, so I can't really quite show you. There it is. Yes. One of the keywords written on this card says collaboration. There is some sense of having to orchestrate or come up with some sort of plan. of sorts that confirm that there is some element of foul play to her disappearance, to the deletion of her. How easy is it to just have her bounce off the boat, allegedly? I now question that, even because I see this hand. There's a hand at play here. Someone manually pushing her out, or ridding her, or deleting her, as it may be. How easy. Even if her body was found, without there being an actual eyewitness, he would allegedly have an argument that, oh, well, she fell out. It's just such a convenient story of, oh, I'm just so despondent and I'm in despair because the gale force winds were at 18 to 22 knots, and there was an easterly wind, and the ebb tides were pulling her out, pulling her this away and pulling me that away. And knowing all of that, if you knew all of those conditions, and guess what I did? The other night, something told me to just Google, is there any sea information, like warnings and stuff that the Bahamian government or Bahamian organizations give out to the public about the conditions? And of course there is. So as someone being a seasoned seaman, a person who's, is always on the waters, he would have known that the waters were going to be affected by the moon. We were in a waning gibbous moon cycle, just following a couple of days from a full moon. So the waters were definitely affected. The tides were affected. It was an ebb flow. Do you all know what that means? It means that at a certain time between like in the night, like around 8 to I guess 4 in the morning, in the Sea of Abaco, the ebb tide was pulling back. So it's kind of volatile. There was some winds that were going on. And then she's being pulled out through the cuts. There's cuts in the islands or channels. And she's being pulled out as the tide ebbs and pulls out into the Atlantic. It pulls out from the Sea of Abaco into the Atlantic. So he may have had anxiety about, did anyone witness him, doing this? And then if not, then he's going to stick to his story that she bounced off the boat. And even if she's found, or even if something comes up that's related to her, he could just justify it by the ebb tides, by the conditions of the water. But my thing is, why were you out there when everybody probably got warnings, especially you, considering you're a sailor, about the conditions that it was going to be that night? Yeah. So in part 2, the Tarot and Oracle reading, I asked, is she in the Sea of Abaco or was she in the Atlantic? My reading is suggesting that she's in the Atlantic, and that is what I feel that what happened was this was serendipitous that they got into it. They had some situation on the boat. Then he has an excuse to be like, oh, well, she bounced out, and then she is miraculously, or terribly so, pulled out into the Atlantic. If you've been following this case, you understand what I'm talking about. I'm not a water person, and I'm not a sailor, but I had to just sit and just be like, well, what do sailors normally know? And do they understand ebb tides, and do they understand the conditions? They are keenly aware of it. Even if he was drinking that day, he's keenly aware of the conditions. And why are you all the way out there? It just doesn't make any sense. Where he's alleging that she fell out, it didn't make sense. The timing. And so there's something about the timing Spirit wants to say to us, that we can be reassured that law enforcement is looking at this, the data, the cell phone tower data, or, you know what I mean? They're looking at that. Does it match to what he told them about the story of how she and him ended up in that situation? And did he know? I'd be curious to know, did they look at his little Google searches or like any notifications that hit his phone? Because when you live by the sea, and I've lived in California, and you get, news reports and news alerts about what's going on with the winds and the water. And I'm not in the water. I'm not one of them folk. But I also now live in the Caribbean. I live 2 miles from the beach. We get warnings and things like that. So was he privy to that information? And then it really adds to, like, why would you take your wife out there in a little tiny dinghy? Yeah. So, anyways, let's move on to the next question. I got a lot more questions. Okay, question number 2. Question number 2 is about the United States Coast Guard Investigative Service seizing Soulmate. Will they discover any additional clues, or have they discovered any additional clues about the Soulmate? Because they did take it. We have here Mother of Earth. Glare. They did, in fact, that's an affirmative of yes. Strength. They have strong evidence, you all. Strong evidence about her demise on there. We'll see the nature of anything else Spirit wants to share about that. They did take, or confidence, I don't want to say, they seized that boat. They seized the sailboat. Mother, that's interesting. Spirit is directing us to, there's some evidence about, strong evidence with the Strength card about what happened to her, right? About what may have happened on that vessel. Footprints. Okay. We're looking at evidence, Spirit. What evidence could they have perhaps gotten? And so, alive. Interesting. That's interesting. I'm using my Seekers Revealed True Crime Oracle, and this is a chunker of a deck. It's got 180 cards, so I have to shuffle it in sections. But I want to be intentional. Some of you ask, when you shuffle, sometimes it looks like cards tumble. Yeah, and you don't look at them. That's because I have to be very intentional when I'm shuffling. I don't want to be thinking about anything else. I want to be singularly focused. So I'm singularly focused on what type of additional clues did they find on the Soulmate when CGIS seized that boat. Okay. Let's do 2 more cards. Affiliated. Interesting. I don't know what to make of that one. That's okay. Okay. Well, I'm just going to say that it looks like if we were concerned, because we didn't find anything, or they didn't report what they found on the boat or on the vessel, that translates to them not finding anything. I'm here to assure you that they did find something that is critical to information about what happened to her and why law enforcement felt called to call it an investigation, murder investigation, right? They did not mince words with that. So, yeah. So these are 2 strong affirmative cards, Mother of Earth and Strength. Now, a mother lode of information they may have found on that boat. They could have also looked at her and his digital footprints, but there could be actual footprints. Something marked in blood, for example, allegedly, right? DNA coordinated to some kind of something on the floor and smeared by an actual footprint. But sometimes when I get this card, it's more about footprints, digital footprints. It could be digital footprints of her. And she is a woman, she is a mother, so I find that interesting. But it could be a mother lode of information, considering we have the Mother of Earth, Queen of Pentacles, over the Mother card, footprints. Also, there could be concerns that maybe she may have still been somewhat alive, allegedly. And this is what I have dreams about with her, and it disturbs me. And I'll just be frank with you, it disturbs me that going in the water, she may have not been in a condition to swim, but she may have not been deceased when she hit the water. Does that make sense? Yeah, I don't know if they're able to even discern that, or if that's their suspicion. I don't know. Someone heard a loud splash, and there's this assumption that it came from something falling from the Soulmate. And if she was in a condition to not, she's not deceased, but maybe she's not totally dead weight, her dropping into the water and then being dragged up onto the dinghy somehow, that could be what could be some sort of evidence, I suppose. We also have a money trail. There's a money trail surrounding this situation. I don't know if that means money on the vessel or money about the boat, or a transaction, a sale that may have been preceding, or a consideration of wanting to sell the boat, and that providing some key financial evidence related to the Soulmate, not just what's on the actual vessel, but about the vessel. That's what I'm picking up on. Hired help. Could be someone helping, unbeknownst to them. We do know that when the Soulmate was being seized, that between the trip, the boat was being transported by some hired sailors, to transport from the Bahamas to Florida, at the behest or from Brian Hooker, her husband. That could be part of the investigation later on down the line. There could be some critical information that they may have about something they noticed about the boat, So it doesn't always, hired help doesn't always mean that it is someone who was hired to take someone out. It could just be, hired help is someone who could become a witness down the line that was hired innocently enough. Like they don't have anything to do with what happened to her, but they have key information since they were on that vessel when it was seized by the U.S. government. Vindication. Who is going to be vindicated? Will it be Brian? Maybe. Or will it be us, those who are seeking justice for her? I'd like to think it's us. You all are free to interpret the card as you wish, but that's how I want to see it. I'm not quite sure of what to make of affiliated. Do we know if he has? I don't think Brian has a criminal record. I don't know. It could be that later down the line they may find some evidence of something that might be a little torrid or, not on the up and up related to him on the vessel. Because again, we're asking the question, the U.S. CGIS has seized Soulmate. Will they discover any additional clues? And if so, what kind of clues? Or maybe they might find evidence that he might be blaming. He might be trying to vindicate himself by blaming or having some reasonable doubt casted upon the situation by saying, well, maybe someone else had a motive to take her out. For example, right? When she was alive. You see how the cards sit. And then lastly, swamp. This was a swampy, murky situation. They're going to find, so metaphorically speaking, swamp can mean a very murky, emotionally dense situation that they were able to find evidence of on top of the boat and about the boat. And also it could be about something falling in murky waters, and there could be some evidence of that surrounding the boat. And maybe there could be some evidence from the Bahamian authorities that were given to the CGIS, okay, about something they picked up or they noticed at the initial time when Lynette was reported missing, something critical or key about the Soulmate, about its position or something about it that they were able to convey to the U.S. government. So that's what I have here. They have some strong evidence, you all. Like, I know it was super discouraging to know that law enforcement left, without finding her. And I knew logically and in my spirit they probably weren't going to find her on this trip. I just kind of hoped that we would hear a bit more about some finds that they had, maybe not her, but maybe some other evidence. And I just feel like they're holding strong of not releasing what it is they found to protect the integrity of the investigation. But they found something that really solidifies and strengthens their case, the U.S. government's case. Okay, so this is encouraging here. All right, I'll be back. Okay, question number 3, and I have to apologize. You may hear the fan in the background. It's really hot tonight. So my apologies if you hear background noises such as the fan. Now, question number 3 is similar to question number 9. Question number 10 is, the United States Coast Guard Investigative Service has seized the dinghy. Will they discover additional clues? And if so, what's the nature of said clues? Okay, let's see what we got. This is 3 of air. It says grief. This is technically a no card, but we're going to pull some additional cards here. We have Ace of Air. Okay. I'm going to do 2 out of 3. Mother of Fire in reverse. So I feel like the Soulmate, in comparison to the dinghy's evidence, is going to have more meat and produce more in terms of evidentiary value. But the dinghy could have and would have had some key evidence had it been seized earlier, but there could be something about it, like sitting for over a month. We have the Ace of Air. We have here 3 of Air. 3 of Air is technically a no card. I'm sorry, it's so graphic. It is a graphic image. My apologies. Ace of Air represents the timing of up to a month. We have here 3 of Air, 3 months, so 1 to 3 months. I mean, this happened, when did this happen? When did she go missing? On April 4th. So it is now June 8th. So Spirit is like, and it's going to do, they, have seized it and they've looked at it and they've gathered what they could. But I wouldn't get so upset about that, about the dinghy. I heard that the dinghy had been sitting at some point indoors. So it's not so much like, oh, it's been sitting on the elements all this time. It hasn't. But in terms of preserving evidence on that boat, I think they may have missed the opportunity, is what Spirit is telling me with this reverse Mother of Fire. Mother of, Queen of Wands. Sorry for the glare. It's like they, how do I say this? They didn't act timely. in terms of preserving key evidence. Also, there could be a chain of custody issue with this dinghy, like who had care, custody, and control of the dinghy following her disappearance, and that could be coming into question. And then really when you think about the dinghy, now one thing, if she was alive going overboard versus deceased, that could also throw off what the dogs can pick up, right? Because I know they had a dog out there, I think her name was Maggie, the little Maggie, the dog, I forgot what they call it, but the dog that can be able to sniff out if someone may have been deceased or was deceased on the water. And here's the thing, if she went overboard alive, that's something else entirely. And the other thing is her scent is all throughout the boat in Soulmate. So there could be justification as to why her scent would be picked up anyway. And why her scent would be picked up if she's alive going into the water. I get a sense that this card is telling me that this is like what we're not really talking about, is that a lot of us are presuming that maybe she was deceased going into the water. I feel like, no, she was alive going into the water. I know that is not a popular opinion, but I'm just interpreting the cards, and this is all my opinion. It is all alleged. So there, you know, take it with a grain of salt. This is a reading. So, but I think that changes things. We have here privilege. We'll talk about that card in a moment. And that is, yeah, I think there's some issues there with the dinghy in the sense of, yeah, that could have been, yeah, that's a lot. We know that's probably the last spot she was at. But it's like, okay, what is the evidence could be exculpatory for him, meaning that if he says, well, she bounced out of the boat, she was alive when she bounced out the boat. Technically, yes, but she could have been in a condition where she wasn't in, you know what I mean, like she wasn't in a healthy condition. She was, you know, because she's a great swimmer. She should have been able to navigate that if she fell off the boat. He should have been able to navigate that. Why didn't he? Spirit, evidence on the dinghy. Anything that we need to know. Organize. This wanted to come out before. It's so interesting how that happens, where I'm like, let me reshuffle and be more intentional. Again, I just don't know what to make of that, just like with the affiliated card. Okay. Spirit has on the fly. Let's talk about it. Okay, so we have privilege. Attorney-client privilege comes to mind, something maybe that the attorneys understand and know and will be able to defend as it relates to the dinghy, may even be able to get that any evidence related to the dinghy perhaps thrown out or questioned heavily. Privilege could be someone is privileged in the sense of protection. They have the protection, they of their story, of the whole circumstances that we find ourselves in terms of what happened to Lynette. She's gone out in the open body of water. How fitting is that for ridding someone of a problem, someone of a situation, her being hurt and, you know, in a condition she's hurt. Now, this shows someone with the IV needle in their arm. She's hurt, you know, but to a point where she couldn't be able to save herself to swim back. Something that always bothered me that Brian, her husband, said in his statement was that she started swimming towards the Soulmate, their boat. Why wouldn't she start to swim towards the dinghy? Why didn't he try to go and get her? Why wouldn't she maybe try to swim towards another sandbar? Because apparently there's all these like sandbars that are like makes the waters a little bit shallow. it just doesn't make any sense. I do feel like there could be something with this organized crime or gang card, that something about the boat before it was stored, like someone could be a part of a gang that pirates boats and goes and steal things off of dinghies or sailboats that they know that are unoccupied or not being like surveillanced. So there could be that argument as well, like, well, the dinghy wasn't all the way protected for this first week or so. So how do we know if the evidence is really part of what Brian is saying or didn't say happened, and not because of someone touching the boat? Does that make sense? Heavy speculation, total heavy speculation about her being, deceased on the Soulmate or deceased in the dinghy. I sense, and it came up in part 1's oracle reading, that they did tussle, they did fight, and he used the word something like we fucked around or something. He used that kind of language, and I don't know what that meant. Like, and nobody really probed him. Like his friend that he was talking to didn't say, well, what does that mean? You fucked around and this and that. And she bounced out, and what does that mean? And so to me, it feels like he may have been kind of telling on himself that maybe they did have a tussle, they did have a fight, and something happened. I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of heavy speculation. Even what I'm doing here could be considered heavy speculation. So we'll just say that. There's a lot of speculation that is what his attorney will be specifically related to the dinghy. That they could be able to try to refute. Here we have the privilege card. The attorney could be able to successfully argue it. But whatever was going on with the Soulmate, they may have a more difficult time to argue. And then crime scene. Well, what we know is, according to Brian, she fell from that boat. For me, it's a question of, in what condition? In what condition? Was she hurt in such a way that if she got back to shore and reported to him, could his whole world be turned upside down, allegedly? So he didn't bother to, like, if he kind of gave her a little shove here with this deleter card, and seeing her struggle because she's in a bad way and doesn't do anything. What do we call that? Is that premeditated? Is that murder too? What do you call that? And at the Fed level, I don't even know what how they classify this, but that's where we're at. Crime scene is quite interesting. I'm going to definitely be curious to hear what you all think about this card, and especially sitting next to the heavy speculation card. Really, all of the cards. I always love hearing what your takes are on the cards that come up, because you all always offer some insightful, intuitive hunches and things to consider. Some of you are local and you know certain things that we from afar don't know or don't understand. So please definitely share in the comment section. All right, I'll be back. I think I'm going to take a picture of these cards and clear the way, because we've got a few more questions I want to ask. Let me see how many more I have. 1, 2, 3, and then one commentary about something. So we have like 3 solid questions I want to ask. So hang in there with me, friends. Now we're at question number 11. What evidence is heavily influencing the CGIS to call this a murder investigation? Two of fire, domination is the key word. 2 of wands. This 2 of fire is quite interesting to me. It is about 2 forces coming together, like a battle, if you will. You have the arm wrestling and the power, the power struggle that comes with that. And so there's something about that, right? And then we have here 3 of water. So we have 2 of fire, 3 of water, 3 of cups, but it's showing like these 3 waterfalls here. Beautiful setting. So this power struggle happening in amidst the, you know, this beautiful setting, if you will. And there's something about, this whole situation, there's some kind of power struggle, some kind of struggle that occurred that they know. And there's an abundance of evidence, because the key word here on this card is abundance. Abundance of evidence of what? Of domination. And so we can look from outside looking in, saying like, okay, we can see like all the stories of what we're hearing from her loved ones, from Lynette's loved ones, saying that, you know, they had a volatile relationship, you know, and that is alleged, of course, but that it was volatile. So we as the public see and hear these things, but law enforcement actually could have evidence, an abundance of evidence of this. And this is why they have coined or indicated that this is a murder investigation. So there's that. We have here rival, backstabber. So again, an interpersonal type of relationship that has become volatile, that became where someone were rivals, you know. So there's evidence of that, of interpersonal relationships. We have here lovers as the next card. Lovers, again, interpersonal relationships. There's evidence of this. Backyard, what's going on in their backyard. Now, what we know here is that they live on a sailboat. So their backyard could be, I don't know, something on the actual sailboat or around the sailboat, outside of the sailboat. What's going on in their backyard, if you will. Maybe somebody having key evidence about something actually happening years ago, maybe last summer in their backyard, last spring or summer, because the 2 of fire representing the timing of 2 weeks or the season of early spring. And then we have here the season of summer represented with the 3 of cups, or even the days preceding the disappearance. But it also could represent last spring and summer. So 2025, something going on in their quote unquote backyard, if you will. Something going on in their relationship. So there's something it related to the emotions. I was thinking that they were cards that were gonna come up with something about like digital evidence, for example, and that is at play. But that is at play, but it's the interpersonal relationship between 2 people with the 2 of wands, the lovers. Suffocation. We know that it was reported, I think it was her mom, could be her daughter as well, I can't remember exactly, indicating that her husband allegedly had choked her to a point at which it went, you know, too far. And so they're looking, CGIS is looking at that. Past history is what Spirit is saying to me. Past history. This is the key evidence that has them really pushing forward with labeling the case as such. You know, that they're investigating her destruction. Destruction of evidence, destruction of her. So we have that. What evidence, Spirit? That card that showed up said registry, but it could be like their history. What is the history? We have here bank records. Again, some kind of historical evidence, financial evidence that we are not privy to. Maybe moving of funds, moving of money, somebody finding out about that. And that becoming a problem between lovers. Anything else, Spirit? Distraction or diversion. Something about the story being a distraction or a diversion, and they're wanting to look at, okay, what is this story diverting us from? What is it? Who has an incentive to try to distract us or move us in one direction? Cult or groupthink. Now, what this tells me, especially with that heavy speculation card that we got earlier, is law enforcement, in, you know, for the sake of public interest, understands that the public is very much having eyes on this case and wanting to see it thoroughly investigated because of the history that they share. And that is something that they are making sure that they are being very careful about how they investigate this case. So that's what I've got here with what evidence is heavily influencing them. CGIS, to call it an M investigation. So question number 12. Question number 12 is dealing with this neighboring boat called Azura. And the CGIS had put out, like a few weeks ago, I think, like a picture of a boat, and it's called Azura, and was asking for the folks who owned that boat, who was docked, I guess perhaps near the Soulmate, if they could come forward. Now, I don't know if they ever did come forward. I don't know. From what I haven't heard that they have, but that doesn't mean that they you know, they could have, and we just aren't privy to that information. So I want to know, why is the CGIS searching for that neighboring boat, Azura? What do they feel that Azura could help in the investigation with? The people on that boat. Some people are speculating, oh, it could be that she was attached to that boat. I don't know about that, but we'll see what's going on. We have here 3 of fire. Exploration is the key word. You see that here. They just probably want to see what they may have witnessed, right? 2 of cups, where they, you know, if they were there for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, did they see how the relationship dynamics were between Lynette and her husband, and then son of air? Did they hear or see anything related to somebody who, with the son of air, page of swords, sometimes this could be someone who acts kind of petulant, like kind of immature for their age, petty arguments, you know, going on. So something to do with some kind of relationship dynamics. I don't know if it necessary. I suppose somebody could say, well, it could have something to do with their vessel themselves, since we see this air, you know, this, what do you call it? Oh my gosh, spaceship. We see that here in this image, but I really feel like they're on a quest to find out, what did you hear? What did you see in the days and weeks? How long were you here for? What did you see in that short window of time? 2 of water representing the timing of 2 cups, 2 days. 3 of fire is 3 weeks, but I think they're looking specific. They're wanting to explore, CGIS, what did the people on board hear or see? What was the nature of how Lynette and Brian were getting along or not getting along? That's what I'm picking up on here. That, you know, what could they possibly share in a statement about what they heard or saw? Because remember, this over here is telling us why they calling it an M investigation. Something to do with the relationship dynamics. So they need evidence to show, like, oh, it was very volatile, or perhaps it was super peaceful. And what could that reveal in the investigation, right? Like, what could be revealed there? Surprise. The taser. Wow. Surprise. Anything else, Spirit? If not, we'll stop there. Nothing else is jumping out. Okay. Let's try the trace evidence telling cards. Anything from this deck? Surprise. Because they left the next day. From what I understand, the folks on the Azura, they left the next day. So, and before she disappeared. So they're wondering, was it a ticking time bomb? Did they hear anything? You know, the people on the Azura, you know, when you left, did anything stand out the night before you left about the boat that you were next to? The taser is so interesting to me. The reason being is because there was a report that some flares, or a flare had let off from the Soulmate. But it wasn't like a flare that shoots up. It was shooting sideways. So, you know, like normally when you have a flare, it would be pointed upward, right? For a variety of reasons. You want it up so people can see it, and also away from you. But it was pointed sideways. Look at how this is shooting off sideways, right? And so it could be they want some verification to speak to them about what did they see from that boat, from the vessel. Two of Cups. What did they see? What did they hear? Especially from the man. They're curious to know that they have any interactions with the male on board Soulmate. Okay. One moment. I'm waiting for someone to drive by. Okay. Medium hair color. I don't know what this could mean, but we're going to leave it on the table for now. It could mean Lynette's hair, you know. Did you see anything? Did you see someone getting their hair pulled? Did you see something? What did you hear? What did you see about the night before y'all left? What about the 2 days? Like if y'all were there for 2 days next to the Soulmate, did you see them about town? Did you see them on their little dinghy? Did you hear them? Did you know, what was the nature of what you heard and saw? Okay. And did you see anything particularly leading up to the moments that something happened to her? And then I can't help but think about the flare. I don't know. That's what I pick up on. That's why they're interested in the Azura. Not that the Azura had anything to do with it, or that they were part of some grandiose plan, or that they didn't know that Lynette is attached to their boat and taken off into the distance. None of that. It feels very much like they are looking for witnesses. And who better than the folks who were on the boat that was docked next to Soulmate? That's what I pick up on. Question number 13. 13. What is the next major development in the investigation, or what's next? Because now that the Coast Guard has left the Bahamas, we don't know where Brian is at. Lynette has not been found. What's next? Will there be any movement? Let's see what the cards have to say. We have Father of Earth. Mother of Water in reverse. I feel like we got this card before. This is what she looks like upright. Trying to get it without the weird glare. Anyways, Mother of Water in reverse. He ain't in reverse. Will we get a development at some point? Spirit is like, it's going to be some time Father of Air, brace ourselves for months to come for this development. I'm going to grab my timing card, my deck in a moment, but we've got to prepare ourselves for the long haul here because we are dealing with multiple agencies, okay? He has given this story that she went overboard, and the burden of proof is on the U.S. government to prove that there was foul play, that he did take her life. And it's not that they necessarily need her body to go forward with prosecution. It's that all the ducks in a row have to line up. And so this is going to be a long, ongoing thing. It's what the Father of Earth is telling us. Can we get justice? Yeah, we can. We can. The Father of Earth is here on the table, the reverse Mother of Water, and the Father of Air. I get a sense that it's going to take some time, but we're going to have to temper ourselves and our expectations. Father of Air representing the timing of up to 14 months, or the season of winter is when something could develop. The Father of Earth could be years in the making. I really pray it's not the case, but I have to just disclose to you what I mean by timing. And sometimes people are like, well, where are you getting your timing from? So King of Earth or King of Pentacles could represent up to 14 years. Now that could be like they go 14 years back into their marriage to see what's going on. It can also mean that it could be 14 years from now that we finally see some semblance of justice. Hopefully not. It also can represent the season of end of autumn. But more importantly, I think what it's telling us is that this is going to be a long haul. He has hired himself an attorney that I guess used to work for the Department of Justice. So this is now entering a new phase in the investigation and into the proceedings of this case. And we just have to be patient. We are dealing with, I feel like this card is signaling a no body situation, meaning they don't have Lynette. And even if they get Lynette, and I don't feel they will, but even if they did, the evidence that is on her person is probably gone. So they have to build a case around and outside of that. Is what the reverse Mother of Water or Queen of Cups is telling us, reverse Queen of Cups. And that we have to pace ourselves with that, with the Father of Air. But justice is coming. We have people in CGIS, in the federal government, that is very much analyzing, looking at every bit of this because they know how many eyes are on this, and they want to signal to other folks who ever get an idea to do something like this again, that they will be scrutinized. This will be fair and just, a fair and just investigation, but they will be scrutinized. So that is encouraging to see, but it just, this is something that we have to brace ourselves for. It's not gonna be something overnight, and it's really sad because, coulda, woulda, shoulda, in terms of like, could we have had CGIS out there sooner than later? Sure. Would it have changed much of anything about her body being discovered? Probably not. Could it have changed evidence that could be like capture like a jacket or something? Sure. But then when you circle back to, well, if he's saying she went overboard, then he could easily justify why a jacket or her little cover up is in the water, right? So we have to, and if they say, oh, well, it's, in this part of the ocean or the sea of Abaco, that must mean that he did something to her. No, it doesn't necessarily translate to that. And I'm not on don't get it twisted, I'm not on his side. It's just that I understand I used to be, in my prior life, someone who had the burden of proof in civil matters to prove, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but the preponderance of evidence. And sometimes evidence you may think is really strong one way, but then it really could help out the defendant, So you have to understand, what the people who are investigating and who will be a part of the judicial body that's going to be adjudicating this case, what they have up against them. But I feel that these cards have told us a lot about what has motivated CGIS to call it a murder investigation, what has motivated them to come out and search, to show their due diligence that they are doing what they're supposed to do to search for her. I think that's wonderful. I think that's a good sign. I think that signals to her husband. If, let's say he was innocent, it signals to him and his people, we are searching and doing what we're supposed to be doing. Just so you know, and so you can't say that we didn't explore everything, but we are looking at you. And then it signals to the public that they're investigating and doing everything they can, but they have to show that they just weren't tunnel vision on him. And if they are tunnel vision on him, they're tunnel vision because of his version of events, and saying, okay, fine, this is your version of events. Let's see if the evidence supports that or refutes it. If it refutes it, okay. Then where do we go next with that? So now where do we go next? We have parole or probation. This could be speaking about the past. Is there something about his past 14 years ago? Up to 14 years ago? I don't know. I know that she was arrested. That was beyond, I think, 14 years ago. Maybe that was only 10 years ago. I can't remember what the issue was. There was something where he was in trouble. They're going to be looking all the way back into his history about allegations and whatnot. This is going to be a protracted, highly circumstantial case. This could be a good sign that there could be someone being, arrested by the feds at some point in the future. When I say the feds, I mean the Coast Guard leading the helm, not the FBI or whatever, the U.S. government. Addiction. Addiction can represent alcoholism. It can represent allegations of someone being an alcoholic or a drug addict. It could represent addictions to control, addictions to workaholic tendencies. But addiction is at the helm. There could be even allegations against the mother of water, Lynette, for example, that, she is the cause of her demise. She's the reason why she lost her bearings and she went overboard. But I get a sense, based on what I'm seeing in all of the cards, is that there was something, some kind of commotion or a fight that happened on Soulmate, that she was heavily, in a bad way. Somehow they get on this dinghy, they go out into the waters, he understanding the ebb tides, and the waters are doing what they do, just as he knows. And there's a, shove or whatever, fighting or what, commencing on. And she's in a way, and in such a way that she wouldn't be able to necessarily swim anymore if she went into the open waters. And so his defense could be, well, she was drinking like I was drinking, and there is no body. They can't just do toxicology on her. And I don't even think they did toxicology on him after being on the water for hours upon hours. Bloodline, her family having to wait for answers. Bones, the secrets of the relationship. Well, I'm going to hold out hope that they find some sort of, remains for her, including skeletal bones. I don't know if that is what this is saying. It could just be speaking to, metaphorically speaking, the bones of their relationship and the bloodline, their relatives being able to really speak to what was going on in that relationship. Let me grab my timing deck. Hold on. I'm back. I'm going to grab that. So I have that, my this time oracle. They're going to be able to speak to it a lot. Some people are like, well, that's just they're only hearing Lynette's side of the story. They were able to see things, and not just Lynette's offspring. not just her offspring, his family too has seen some things and heard some things, or will see and hear things in the future. Okay, so Spirit is not wanting to give a lot of information about timing long distance, but that's okay. We talked about timing in terms of father of air up to 14 months, or the season of end of winter. We also talked about autumn. There could be another development. Midsummer could be more information about the case, or some sort of development more about the background of their relationship coming to the fore, and why law enforcement is continuing on their quest to figure out what happened to her and why. I think it was just a combustible thing, that it's something about money, or about someone like hiding funds, or wanting to hide funds, or wanting to protect funds. So let me show you these cards. We have tonight, Friday, Saturday. So there could have been some arguing that had been going on. Spirit is trying to tell me Friday night, then she goes missing Saturday, right? So Saturday night going into Sunday. So that weekend. And this is why the Two of Cups is interesting to me. Two of Cups representing the timing of 2 days, and why the Azura, the people who may have been moored by the soulmate, has critical information about the nature of what they heard and saw, leading up to her disappearance. So this is hopefully a sign that maybe they'll get that information down the line. We may not be privy to what law enforcement finds out, but these are good signs, okay? I suppose it could be like, oh, y'all, this week we're going to find out something this weekend. But I feel like this is more speaking to this situation. We may hear something 6 to 8 weeks out, within a month, 9 to 12 weeks. But sometimes, just so you all know, when we're talking about timing, timing is a very much a construct. It's something we make, but it could be timing going into the future from today, and timing into the past. So it could be like law enforcement is going to really be heavily analyzing within a month to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks preceding her disappearance. And then maybe there's something developing, or we get more information 9 to 12 weeks from now, or maybe not us, but her loved ones, the people who are, waiting for news, the people who are closest to her, who law enforcement will be sharing information with. The public will not be knowing much. I feel like we're going to be the last, very, very last. Sometimes with cases, especially like when it's investigated at the state level and below, it feels like moment by moment we're getting updates. This feels like we're entering a phase where we may not be getting updates a lot, because the law enforcement is going to be quite judicious about how much, if any, they release to the public. So hopefully, this summer we get to hear some more. Hopefully, right? We'll see. Matter of days, maybe. I don't know, but I really think that it's gonna be some time. And it's because they're building a circumstantial case, and they have to show that they are investigating and exploring his version of events, and then saying, wow, we did do that, we explored that, and we kept coming up against walls as to why that can't be the case, and this is why we're now going in this direction, right? So they have to be law enforcement has to be very careful, and whoever's prosecuting has to be very careful with this case. That's that. So, before I let y'all go, I wanted to talk to you all about something that came up in part 1, and I touched upon it in part 2. And it was about Matt Lowe's Key, which is now called Montage Cay in the Bahamas. And And the reason I wanted to talk about it was because when Brian talked to his friend Blaine Stevenson, and there's an audio recording of that conversation. Some of y'all heard it. I forgot. It was like a couple of days after Lynette went missing. And he mentioned something about the ebb tides and, the easterly wind, and all of this jazz, and that, he ended up on Marsh Harbor, and not too far away from Marsh Harbor is Matlo's Cay, which is also called Montage Cay. Mont is kind of the Latin root word for like mount or mountain. In part 1, I got a mountain card, and I'm like, this could be some kind of clue as to where she could have initially went, where she could have initially bounced off, and then she was pulled out into the Atlantic. I still feel that is the case. And so I just wanted a card to see if we're on the right track with that. A lot of people are thinking that she went through Toulouse Cut. I'm not energetically getting a strong intuitive hit on that, okay? But for some reason, when I first heard him say about Matlo's Cay, aka Montage Cay, I knew then when I thought back to my mountain card, I said, oh my God, that's it. Look at that. The Chariot is a strong yes. And that's also why I think he said something even during that conversation or later, like, oh, that could be why the ebb flow could be why some of her things may be over, by, Matlo's Cay. Okay. And I will try to remember to link the audio of Blaine. Like, I think it's at the 23:04 mark, 23-minute mark, that her husband, Brian, is talking about this. And it always struck me when I first heard it. And I said, that's interesting. And if you look at the map, you will see cut jutting across from Matlo's Cay and Marsh Harbor. And if you almost a straight line, it goes off into the Atlantic Ocean and very much affected by the ebb tides, the pulling. So, yeah, the Chariot is a strong yes card. It is about movement. It is an affirmative card of if I'm asking a yes or no question, which I am. Am I on the right track with my intuition, feeling like he basically is telling on himself and just trying to cover his tracks if anything of hers came up? And then he could easily justify. And then he can also justify like, oh, well, this is why I ended up on Marsh Harbor all the way from Elbow Cay. This is why I ended up all the way over to Marsh Harbor is because of those tide pulls and the wind. And then that's why she kind of moved he went this way and she kind of went here. It's a short distance between Marsh Harbor and Matlo's Cay. Okay, so I'm going to take this as a confirmation. And I, in part 2, asked if she was pulled out to the Atlantic. And the cards indicated yes. Some people still believe that she could be somewhere stuck in Sea of Abaco in like some deep pocket. And that could be the case. I never be like, oh, you're wrong, I'm right. I never do that. I just get a strong sense that she was pulled out. And I did some additional research the other night as well when I was learning about ebb tides and all of this stuff and high tide and low tide and all the things. I also learned that she could have gone through the channel over by Man-o-War Cay. And Man-o-War Cay, could have shallow to semi-deep water. But once you get past Man-o-War Cay and you get to the other side, to the Atlantic side, it's not even very far that you got to go before there is a 1,000 to 2,000 foot drop into the seafloor where the coral reefs drop. So I was like, whoa. I was researching that like a couple of nights ago, and I just couldn't stop thinking about her and thinking about where she could be. So that's what I pick up, you all. Let me know what you all think. I mean, again, like I said, this is all alleged. This is just, you know, us looking at the card interpretations, asking the questions, seeing what cards come up. And I'm so curious to hear from you. Did you do any subsequent readings on her case? Even if you don't do readings, what do you think about what I'm saying here? You could probably be like, you just blowing smoke up our butts. You could be like that. But I've been following this case quite a bit. I am in the Caribbean on the Atlantic Ocean side. And I can't help but just say prayers when I see the ocean. I think of her, and I just want her. I just want answers for her loved ones. I want justice for her desperately. And I'm praying for that. And now I think I'm done. Now, unless there's some new developments that come up, I will come back to this reading table to do another reading. But for now, I think we have wrapped it up. Parts 1, 2, and 3. Check them out. I will link all the videos in the description box down below. I know I've rambled a lot. I know I was like throwing a bunch of information at you all, but this has been quite the case because it's not in my normal wheelhouse. I'm not a sailor. I can't stand to be on open ocean like that. But I'm drawn to Lynette and her beautiful spirit. And so, yeah, this tells me everything I need to know about Montage Cay, aka Matlow's Key, Man o' War Key, and the Atlantic Ocean. Do me a favor on your way out, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It really helps me out. And that's it for this Maritime Mysteries case. Thank you all so much for hanging in there with me. Leave me a comment. Let me know what's on your mind. Bye for now.